Hello, everyone. I'm Julie Banderas along with Charlie Hurt, Tommy Lauren, and Jason Chaffetz, and welcome to the Big Weekend Show. The big story tonight, the media covering for President Biden's so-called weird words. As Biden officially kicks off his 2024 campaign, his comments seem to be getting weirder and weirder.
We have plans to build a railroad from the Pacific all the way across the Indian Ocean. The Build Back Biden, Build Back Better.
She was 17, I was 40.
Don't make me a dog-faced lion pony soldier.
I might add, if I didn't, I'd be sleeping alone. All right, where are we going?
All right, God save the Queen, man.
But don't worry, says the media, totally normal. He has been like this for years. That's comforting. And while Biden stumbles, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is serving up some fresh attacks going after Biden's failed policies.
We need to restore sanity in this country. This country is in decline. It's a choice we as Americans will make over these next 18 months.
A new op-ed in the Washington Examiner pointing out DeSantis' strategy is one other Republican presidential hopeful could learn from. And another GOP contender, Senator Tim Scott, is firing back at former President Obama for calling him a racist. Here's Scott earlier on Fox News Sunday.
There's no higher compliment to be attacked by President Obama. Whenever the Democrats feel threatened, they drag out the former president and have him make some negative comments about someone running, hoping that their numbers go down. If anyone should be standing and shouting at the mountaintops that America is not a racist country, it should be the man that Americans supported twice for the nomination and becoming president. The evolution of America is palpable. Progress in this nation, undeniable.
God save the Queen. Tommy, they're just not weird words. They're scary words because they are coming from the mouth of our president. Now, if those words were coming from, like, my buddy at a bar, then those would be funny. But they're not funny. This is not funny. And why is it that everybody is making light of the fact that the president just seems unstable?
If this were his attempt at comedy, it would be one thing. You know, George W. Bush, he said some weird things from time to time, and it was kind of hokey, and we all laughed, but we didn't question his coherence or his cognitive ability. This is about cognitive ability and the mental gymnastics that those in the mainstream media and the leftist pundits are trying to do over the last couple of days to try to explain away what he meant by God Save the Queen or what he means by everything that he says is remarkable. I mean, they really should be given an Olympic medal for their efforts there. But this is also what's interesting to me. The man is obviously in decline. So if we had an honest press corps, honest journalists out there, more than one, right? More than the ones that just work at our network, asking this man over and over and over again and repeatedly about this pay-to-play bribery scheme, I think the man would crumble, and I think he would admit to something, because I don't think he has the faculties to keep up this lie much longer. But people rarely ask, so we don't get the answer. But we should. Yeah, and the government, first of all, should be investigating. It shouldn't just be the media or certain people in the media that are asking the questions. Why isn't the government doing any kind of investigating? Axios came out with this article saying, and I quote, Biden's quirky aphorisms are sometimes weaponized by Republicans to portray the 80-year-old president as being in mental decline. But Biden has been using unique phrases for years, and even some of his aides aren't exactly sure what he means. Okay. They did not know what he meant by God Save the Queen, unless he's got some special relationship with Queen Camilla, or maybe he doesn't know that Queen Elizabeth is dead. I'm not really quite sure. But that does not make this okay, just because they didn't understand. Well, if they didn't understand, well, then what the heck are we supposed to think as the American people?
It's not done in isolation. It's not as if you know, we have a camera trained on you, you're going to slip up and say some silly, stupid stuff. It's a daily drumbeat. This was the campaign kickoff for Joe Biden to run again as president of the United States. And the concluding line that he gives to America on why to elect him the next president was God Save the Queen. That is literally what happened. That's not weaponizing by a Republican onto a Democrat. It's happening on a regular basis, and they cover for him. They don't ask him the hard question. The only time that I'm aware of that he did get asked this question, he said, just watch me. Just watch me. That was what his challenge was to the media, to the American people. And now you watch him. He doesn't know where to walk. He stumbles and falls. and he can't coherently put together and string sentences together on a consistent basis.
Yeah. All right. I mean, Charlie, I know you're chuckling over there, and I'm sure you want to weigh in real quick, and then I'm going to move on to something else.
No, it's kind of funny that that they talk about how Republicans want to weaponize the language that he uses. What, by repeating what he said?
Right.
That's weaponizing it? This is why the guy doesn't want to have a debate, and it looks like maybe Democrats are not going to have a debate.
Yeah. Okay, so Ron DeSantis is joking about wokeness while bartending in Reno before he head off to have a good time there. Let's just watch this. It has to do with Bud Light.
Just so you know, I'll serve you anything except Bud Light.
The Washington Examiner op-ed writing, DeSantis knows the significance of protecting our country's cherished values and that Biden is trying to ruin them. And in a crowded field to be the Republican nominee for president, DeSantis could be the beacon of hope to save the nation from Biden's fiscal and cultural left-wing decay. All right. So, I mean, obviously, DeSantis, he is at the top of the polls, although he still trails Trump. But it's interesting how this is all kind of playing out.
Oh, yeah. And as glaring as these problems are with Joe Biden, the stupid things that he says and the incomprehensible things that he says, that even his own White House handlers who are paid to sort of broadcast his message, they have no idea what he's talking about. As bad as that is, it's nowhere near as bad as the ideas that he has. All of his ideas are terrible. And he's forcing them on us. And his inability to speak or explain himself, which was no different from his campaign for president, in which he didn't really run. He never ran on sort of any arguments or anything. He hid from the press. It's so insulting because you can't, they are doing really dramatic things to our country right now, and they're not even pretending to make an argument to defend it all. And which is, of course, another reason why they don't want to have a debate about this stuff, because they can't defend these ideas.
I want to jump in on something you said, because I think this is really important. I think the Democrats, the left, would rather talk about Biden's cognitive decline than his policies. Because if they have to talk about his policies, then they have to reiterate that those are their policies, that they have puppeteered for him to ramrod through. They would rather us talk about the fact that he said, God save the Queen. They would rather us talk about him falling over at an Air Force award ceremony or graduation ceremony, because they would rather talk about that than having to say, these are the policies that we advocate for. So I think this is strategic.
And to take it a step further, I think they would rather talk about strip clubs in the middle of the White House lawn than talk about their terrible accomplishments.
I didn't quite know where you were going with that.
Yeah, I know. But yes, he is referring to topless trans women.
That's what it was.
Yeah, that's a good party right there. The New York Times Robert F. Kennedy Jr. With Musk, let's put this up on the screen, pushes right-wing ideas and misinformation. This is basically the media's take on Robert F. Kennedy Jr. becoming a candidate here. Washington Post writes that he tests the conspiratorial appetite of Democrats. The Washington Monthly memo to the media, you are not obligated to cover a crackpot like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. So basically what they're trying to say is that this guy is a Republican dressed in Kennedy clothing. I mean, that's what they're pointing him out to be.
Did you ever think that the Democratic Party as a whole and as mass would try to discredit a Kennedy and say that they're too centrist, they're too... And Kennedy... I mean, he does have some interesting ideas, but he goes down to the border at 2 o'clock in the morning and says, we can't sustain this. He does some things to draw some policy contrast that Republicans and I think truly centrists would go. And the reality is the guy has about 20% of the Democratic base at this point, and he's just getting started.
Maybe they should actually listen to him. Maybe they should listen to somebody who talks some sense, because something that he actually talks about is that his inspiration is for his children, for the children of the future. And this administration and Democrats right now that are running for office are teaching our children about trans communities and being gay and LGBTQ, where he's trying to protect and preserve the youth and the innocence of our children. So maybe Democrats should possibly listen in to somebody who's got a point in their party. I want to read this from the New York Post. This is from the op-ed. It says the strategy is to disqualify Kennedy by labeling him a font of misinformation out to serve America's moneyed technocrats. In other words, a Republican in Kennedy clothes, like I just said. But I mean, that's kind of sad that they can't rally behind one of their own. So they're just going to put all their eggs in Biden's basket and not look outside that box.
Yeah,
that's
because
ignorant.
because you can't have any questions whatsoever. You can't have any discussion about it. But I think that what RFK is actually trying to do, he's probably more than as much as anything, he's trying to protect his own party that his family has loved going back for generations, that has gone completely insane and off the deep end.
I mean, even Ron DeSantis is saying that they need to find a better Democrat, right?
Oh, they're going to. We talked about
they
this
want
yesterday.
Gavin Newsom. The Republicans even want somebody different.
They are going to wait, but they're not going to take a risk like someone like an RFK. No. That's too outside of the box. That's too outside of the realm. They need somebody that can still accomplish what they want to accomplish, which is the radical transformation of this country, and that's going to be someone like a Gavin Newsom.
Yeah, no, they got to be more liberal than RFK, right?
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.